There once was a dream called Rome. Yes, indeed there was. But what if? What if everything? What if everything went perfect for Rome? I think so too. Well, here's the thing. This was requested numerous times by people. True Romans, as you should be, will like, comment, share, and subscribe. And true Romans will support the original content creator, for we are checking out and getting our learn on, as true Romans should. What if everything went perfect for Rome? That's right, buddy. Now I'm going to take over. Okay, dude, take it easy. Take it easy. Take it easy. So, hey, folks, my name's Kit. This is Americans Learn. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And this video is done possible by, let's see, possible history. What if everything went perfect for Rome? So, drink some true Roman wine, eat some true Roman bread, make sweet, 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 sweet love to your true Roman wife. And let's get ready to enjoy this video. In a 3, let's go. And an uno.
Today, we're going to be looking at an alternate timeline where everything went perfect for the Romans. Usually in this series, I try to focus on short-term geopolitical ambitions of nations, seeing just how big a nation can get, while staying away from internal politics. The issue with doing this for Rome is simple. Rome is massive. Probably more massive.
That's what she said. Oh, yeah.
Than it had any right to be. Sure, we might be able to create a slightly larger Rome, but I want to mostly focus on Roman state building, especially during the era of the Roman emperors, to ensure that Rome, in some form, is a longer lasting entity. But this also means that this episode, more than any other in this series, is very subjective and based on my personal opinions and biases. So please keep that in mind as we dive in. In terms
As much as I would love... He better be careful with his words. Take it easy. All right, dude, you're going on timeout. I say this with being a true Roman. You know, the empire was massive. That's what she said. But in many ways, what would the nation state look like in the centuries to come? I mean, as a superpower, it is possible that it could have maintained itself. I mean, if we're looking at large nations that have still maintained and who they are, I mean, you have China, for example. You know, it can be argued you have Russia being a massive nation as well. You could thank Genghis Khan and his fantastic friends for really reshaping and making Russia and China the nations that they are today. But it is interesting whether or not the Roman Empire could have sustained. I mean, I do call in doubt, but you know, it's don't nail me to the cross. Don't feed me to the lions in the Colosseum.
In terms of early Roman history, I am not going to change much. I could say things like, Rome absolutely crushes Carthage without issue in the First War, instead of having to fight 3, but let's be honest, during these early expansions of Rome, Rome already showed their amazing luck and skill by conquering most of the Mediterranean in a couple of centuries. And the hardships
As they should. As they should. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell.
They experienced along the way were extremely important in shaping the Roman Republic, and thus, I do not want to change them too much. Adding to that, the Roman Empire as it existed, even in our timeline, was already bigger in places than it should be for their level of technology. For example, we could have Crassus or Caesar conquer Parthia, but this would have been a fool's errand to hold. Communication between Rome and the outer provinces was slow, and if a new invader threatened Roman rule over these provinces, Parthia and beyond could have been overrun by the time that the leadership in Rome even realized that there was an issue. But that doesn't mean that we can make no changes to the Roman borders, as I try to create what I consider to be the ideal Roman boundaries. In the Balkan, we will have Rome stop at the Danubian border, preventing Rome from investing in difficult to defend lands in Dacia, consolidating Roman lines. In a similar vein, the Roman conquest of Britannia was a vain prestige project, costing the Romans significantly, while it would be one of the first provinces that Rome abandoned due to it being a distant island. Legions tasked with defending Britannia in our timeline can now be redirected to Rome's northern boundary. Then finally, there is the matter of Germania. The
Germania! There's nothing good about them. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, we're tolerant of everybody here. Except for Germania. I mean, we're okay with Germania. Calling themselves the Holy Roman Empire. How dare you stand where he once stood?
Rhine is a perfect and very defendable border for the Romans, but I have one significant issue with it. The moment that the Rhine border is broken by invaders, there is very little stopping them from overrunning all of Gallia up to the Alps and the Pyrenees. If Rome was successful in a conquest of Germania up to the Elbe, the Romans would get three main advantages. The Elbe is a river, much like the Rhine, but when it gets breached, there is still the Rhine to fall back to.
Yes.
Along the way, the thick Germanic forest would slow down the pace of invaders as well. Finally, the total length of the Roman border would be smaller as well. Something like this would be my initial goal for the borders of an alternate Roman Empire. But the most important changes that we must make lie in Roman state building. The Romans are often compared to another empire of the time, the Han. Both the Han and Rome were states fundamental to everything that came after in their region. What's the difference? The Han, together with other Chinese dynasties both before and after, managed to create a somewhat unified culture, religion, government structure, etc. etc.
That's right. Listen, I know when I watched a couple of videos from Kraut, that one video that he got a message from somebody who lives in China, Europe's biggest mistake was the Roman Empire falling. I could see somebody from China with a serious face like, yeah, you know what the problem was Europe? When Rome fell. Well done, China. Well done, random fan who commented on Kraut's video. Sorry, my phone is buzzing. I got family members visiting, and they're shopping in Chicago, so I'm just kind of keeping an eye on my cell phone in case I get a text message like, hey, kid, come pick us up. So, just want to... I love my family members, okay? As a true Roman should.
Building a foundation on which all Chinese
Shout out to Japan. What, I got my biases for Japan.
dynasties and governments after would base themselves on. In my history school education, I got taught that Rome practically did the same in Europe, giving everyone Roman citizenship, spreading Roman culture, and unifying Europe. But, upon further inspection, I don't agree with that idea. Sure, the idea of Rome remained a permanent constant in Europe even after the fall of the West, with many Western successor states still, on paper, remaining subject to the Eastern Emperor, while states like the Ostrogoths continued many Roman institutions, but never again would there be true unity in the Mediterranean anywhere close to what Rome provided. To take an example, even in the early days of Rome, the conquered peoples in Italy weren't considered Romans. People in Rome were cives Romani, Roman citizens. The others were considered Latini or Socii, who still enjoyed many Roman rights and could become Roman citizens, but they weren't automatically. Only after the Social War in 91 BC, 2 centuries after Rome initially expanded into the region, was Roman citizenship expanded to these regions. I'm fine with the idea of Roman citizenship being something that needs to be earned, but it should also be something that's acquirable, so that it and the idea of Romanness can spread better across the empire. We'll get back to citizenship later, but something else that needs a desperate rework is the Roman military system. Gaius Marius, this handsome fella, had revolutionized the Roman army. Around 100 BC, Rome was reaching its limits with the way they were conducting their wars. Roman armies were created.
Show me your AI art without telling me your AI art. It's a good picture. I'm seeing the creepy faces in the background too.
Only at times of war, via lottery amongst Roman male citizens. When Rome was small, this was useful, as Rome could lose legion after legion, but they just raised new ones. But it also had significant drawbacks. Soldiers which had served the Roman army for years, becoming very experienced at combat, then simply went home, likely never to be chosen to serve again. The Roman army was also very divided by class, as only people of certain wealth were even allowed to serve, but even if it wasn't a law, Roman soldiers were expected to bring their own military gear, so only the wealthier Romans could even afford it. The leadership of the Roman legions then mostly fell to the consuls of Rome, the two leaders of the Roman Republic. This meant that sometimes consuls with no military experience had to lead armies, sometimes with disastrous results. This became too much when Gaius Marius, as a consul, had to take care of King Jugurtha in Africa, only to find that political schemes had ensured that no legions were available for him, and thanks to costly wars in the past, there was only a limited number of Romans that he could use to raise a new legion from. This sparked Marius to introduce a couple of extremely effective reforms. He allowed everyone to enter the army.
That's right. True Romans, stand up and fight. Everybody fights for Rome.
And since the poor couldn't supply their own weaponry, he made the state responsible for providing the arms. With this, a new career path opened up for the poor Romans: become a professional Roman soldier in exchange for wages and potentially spoils of war. With this, the Roman army could grow significantly larger and, more importantly, better, since standardized weapons and permanent soldiers could now make up the legions. These career soldiers could also become an actual standing army, ready to fight whenever, instead of just being formed whenever a war deemed it necessary. All of these Marian reforms were extremely valuable for the development of Rome, but there's also a negative caveat to all of this. The leadership and logistics of the army were placed in the hands of generals. Very useful to make the armies more autonomous, mobile and effective, but
it's time to go mobile. Your liberation is at hand. We go mobile.
Also extremely dangerous. With this reform, the army became more dependent and loyal to their commanders rather than the Roman Senate and state. This issue became extremely clear when Sulla marched on Rome and proclaimed himself dictator, becoming the first.
Yeah, well, you could dictate this. Alright. I was being funny, but okay.
First person to seize power by force in the Roman system. 2 generations later, this would happen again when Caesar crossed the Rubicon to start.
Caesar did nothing wrong. He was enacting his rights. Julius Caesar did nothing wrong. In this household, Julius Caesar is a saint.
The Civil War, and upon his death, again a third civil war between Octavian and Mark Antony.
Mark Antony. He let Cleopatra's punani get the better of his thinking skills. So there you go. And Augustus did nothing wrong either.
After the Marian reforms, on 3 separate occasions, army leaders used their legions to further their own interest rather than those of the state, because loyalty lay not with Rome, but with the general. Economically, the Romans also had a major issue with slavery and welfare. During their extremely swift expansion, the Romans had enslaved millions upon millions of people who worked massive tracts of land owned by the nation's elite. This extremely large number of massive slave plantations was so profitable that small farm owners were outcompeted and bought out, leading to them massing in cities being unemployed. With slave labor filling the farms, there simply wasn't enough to do, and the wealth of the elites just kept rising, while the government had to cover the cost of subsidizing the poor of Rome with bread and games to prevent civil unrest.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Through this system,
when you made an oopsie, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, what's happening here? Well, the Christians are being fed to the lions and tigers.
Rome's elite prospered, while the government bled expenses, and the poor remained without opportunity. This system would need to be heavily reformed, lessening the number of slaves while providing protection for the small farmers to reduce the burden on the people and state of Rome. It's a miserable situation that's startlingly easy to imagine. We now live in a time,
because heaven forbid we'd be repeating history all over again,
where wealth inequality rivals even that of ancient Rome. Except now, citizens aren't being bought out of their farms or crowded in the cities, they're struggling to find home while debt rises at one of the fastest rates in history. Now the past shows us that the elite members of society insulate themselves from times like these in markets that we cannot access for lack of connections or funds. But Masterworks' art investment platform is changing that, opening access to one of these elite markets and paying out tens of millions of dollars through a pandemic, global conflict, and now banking crashes. Long seen as a store of wealth, even in ancient times, the art market is currently surpassing even its pre-pandemic highs.
Yes, art is where it's at. But listen, folks, be careful what you do and what you invest in. Please be safe.
Enabling Masterworks to sell over $45 million worth of art to date and hand back the proceeds to their users. In fact, every one of Masterworks' 13 exits has turned a profit. These users didn't spend millions of dollars or become art experts, they simply invested in shares of hand-picked works by legends like Picasso and Banksy with just a few clicks. By now, over 730,000 users have signed up to gain access, but there's a waitlist. But our partnership with Masterworks ensures that you can get VIP access to their latest offerings, and so to skip the waitlist, check the description below and let's dive back into the video. But back to politics, I consider the late Roman Republic an antiquated institution, no longer capable of keeping up with the expanding and changing nature of the empire, and Marius's reforms were instrumental in bringing it down. For this reason, we will keep Marius's reforms up until Octavian, who is now better known as Augustus, becomes the first de facto Roman emperor. With Augustus being in control of most of the political and military power in Rome, he is the prime candidate to curtail the power of the army, to prevent army commanders from seizing power in the future. This would weaken Rome's ability to wage mobile, expansionist wars in the future, but with the Republic gone, the period of rapid Roman expansion is over anyways, as Rome switches to a more defensive stance along their borders. The hit in army effectiveness is worth it to secure political security, as we can now prevent countless civil wars and periods of unrest, as fewer individuals have the military power to challenge each other for control. Which leads us to the issue of succession within the empire, as it was a bit of a free-for-all. An interesting quirk of the Roman Empire is that it desperately
Hey, there are no kings in Rome.
Pretended to not actually be an empire, especially in the beginning. After Romulus, 7 kings had ruled Rome, after which they had been overthrown and a republican system had emerged in its stead. Ever since then, the idea of a king ruling over Rome made many sick. This hatred of kings had also contributed to the assassination of Caesar, who had desires to become king and had become dictator for life, which sounded very king-like. This is why Augustus was the perfect person to laud the transition from republic to empire. Augustus wasn't a king, an emperor, or a dictator, he was simply the princeps.
Yes, the first among equals.
It just so happened that many positions of power within Rome were now centralized in Augustus, but he wasn't an emperor like you'd usually imagine. Thanks to this, as well as the fact that Augustus didn't sire any male heirs, resulted in a succession system based on adoption. During his reign, Augustus adopted many men to groom as the next emperor, usually within his own family. In the best case scenarios, a succession system like this could lead to a period like the 5 good emperors, as this adoptive method usually results in more competent men gaining power, rather than people born and brought up knowing that they
Commodus. Well, the douchebag himself.
will soon be the most powerful person in the empire. For example, this man, Commodus, came after the 5 good emperors, all 5 of which were chosen by adoption via their predecessors, while Commodus instead was simply the son of the last emperor, and, whether coincidence or not, he was more dictatorial, power-hungry, and insecure than the emperors before him, ending what many consider to be a Roman golden age. It is during this era of the 5 good emperors that I want one of them to introduce an official law of Roman succession, something that didn't exist in our timeline, forcing the emperor to adopt their heir and forbidding their direct children from succeeding them. While this won't fix everything, this will surely ensure a higher quality of succession, as candidates have to prove their virtue, leadership, and good relations with the other Romans before even being adopted, overall leading to better emperors. Then I want to consider the division of the
Sounds good on paper. It's a bold strategy. Let's see how it turns out for them, man.
empire in administrative and military terms. Fact is, Rome is a pretty crappy location for the administrative capital of the empire. Sure, it's relatively safe, far away from the borders and protected by the Alps, but it's also far away from the tension points of the empire, especially those in the east, against Rome's main rival, Parthia.
So that means there's only one place to choose. You know it. You love it. Constantinople. We don't recognize no Istanbul here.
I would propose, much like Diocletian had in our timeline, the creation of up to 3 more administrative and military centers.
Okay.
The first would center around Gallia, tasked with the defense of the northern borders of Rome along the Elbe. The second would center around the Balkans, also tasked with defending the northern borders of the empire along the Danube, while the third would be the most important, and it would center around the east, including the incredibly wealthy regions of Asia Minor, the Levant, and Egypt, tasked with the defense of the
Camel by camel. If you know what I reference, I love you.
empire's lucrative eastern regions. The final region would remain centered around Italy and be tasked with the communication,
Well, that's way out there from... Okay. Alright.
supplementation, and cooperation between the other regions, as Rome would still remain the official capital of the empire. While this would somewhat open the doors to large-scale rebellions, it would also allow for more effective administration and defense, as there is more of a division of defensive tasks rather than one location to ensure the defense of the entire empire from. Here we must also mention the difficulty of continually raising armies in this new Roman reality. By the time of Marius' reforms, joining the army was a solid paycheck, while it also provided the prospect for spoils of war during Rome's near constant expansionist wars, as well as gaining land upon retiring. But these wars of glory, loot, and conquest were now largely behind us, and by now fewer and fewer people actually wanted to join the military. Here, we once again insert the idea of nation building by introducing some form of mandatory service, even if for a relatively short period, to get people together in the army as a good way to spread the Latin and Greek languages and customs, while also bolstering the defenses of the Roman borders. With the destruction of the slave plantations, there should also be more money available for the government to use on the military, since they no longer have to provide for the social welfare of its people. And with that, we reach the final thing that I want to change, the religion of the empire. The Roman religion failed to provide any form of unity to the empire, as apart from the Romans and the Greeks, others didn't really follow it, and it failed to compel people to convert. For most of Rome's history, this wasn't too much of an issue. It was an open and tolerant religion, compatible with most other religions in the Mediterranean, and only when Jesus was hung on a cross...
Is that William Dafoe? Hey, if any of you have bad things to say about William Dafoe, hey, listen. If you insulted Dafoe, then you have got to go. Go. Can Spider-Man come out to play?
creating a new religion, did this become an issue. Despite heavy persecution, the new Christian religion only grew and grew. A big deal, since the Catholics were monotheistic, only accepting their one true God, not the entire Roman pantheon. As the religion spread, the religion also caused rifts in the social fabric of Rome. But when Rome officially adopted the Roman religion, the reverse became the issue, as the now Christian Roman government and church had to contend with pagan beliefs across the empire, which they now considered heathens. The Roman pantheon simply wasn't designed to spread like wildfire to create unity, so we can do two things. Remove Christianity and hope that all is well from there and no other religion comes to challenge the religious unity of Rome, or we can think of an alternate religion, more tolerant, to provide a sense of unity to the empire. I personally prefer the second option, but it's difficult to see how exactly this would look. I have seen it offered that instead Buddhism could have spread throughout the Roman Empire, where we could even have Jesus as a figure in Roman Buddhism as an Easter egg, but I will leave the specifics of the question of religion up in the open. But, in my opinion, it's better for the empire if Christianity doesn't spread in Rome. But, don't get me wrong, despite all of these changes, by no means have we created a perfect society or state
Rome's perfect in every way. It's fine. It's fine. Leave it alone.
capable of lasting 1,000 years unopposed. The Roman state and institutions would need to constantly evolve and change with time, as Rome's borders ebb and flow with the welfare of the empire. Civil wars, rebellions, challenges to succession, bad emperors, none of these issues are eliminated from this alternate empire. But, in my opinion, this alternate timeline has two significant changes which I hope to have accomplished. The Roman Empire is in a better state to weather the immediate issues of the first 500 years, the period in which the West fell in our timeline. While the longer the empire lasts in a stable state, the more the idea of Romanness can spread throughout the empire. Much like China, I hope to have created an empire which can lay a foundation that stands the test of time. Not necessarily never falling or never dividing, but always getting back up, perhaps under different government structures, perhaps with shifted borders, perhaps even being conquered and usurped by nomadic invaders every now and again.
Hey! 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 We don't use those words here.
But the idea that the Mediterranean is supposed to be united under Rome sticks, and in some form, Rome remains truly eternal.
Yes.
And that's where I'll end this video. Thank you all
Yes.
for watching, consider leaving a like and a comment to support the content, subscribe for 2 more videos every single week, and to continue watching, click on one of the 2 videos now on screen.
Good. All right. I'll be checking out more of this content, but folks, let me be clear here, okay? Rome will never fall. Not on my watch. Not ever. Not forever, never. Let me be clear. Rome is eternal. Rome is the city. But this was great because a lot of people were saying, hey, really enjoyed the Roman Empire. Really like your unbiased history. I got a couple of stuff here. Let's see, but would they even be Romans without a succession crisis every third emperor? Well, probably so. Reading a couple other comments. Can we get a part 2 of how perfect Rome would deal with the events of the Middle Ages? Oh, that would be great. I would like that. There we go. What else? I don't think comparing Rome to China in this matter makes much sense. The Chinese geography was much easier to unite than the Mediterranean. In a way, everything did go perfect for Rome already. Everything was perfect for Rome. And then Germania came around. And then also weak emperors. Well, I agree with most of the video. I believe it would have. I believe that Rome should have actually conquered Dacia sooner in this timeline, preferably as a replacement to Britannia, and continue its conquest to all of Pannonia as well. My reason being is that Dacia, though it was a difficult province to hold, was greatly rich in gold, silver, timber, iron, and many other resources that provided a boon to the Romans. Pannonia is a relatively fertile land that could act as another breadbasket to the empire, as well as grazing land for horses and cattle, which was of great importance to the empire's economy, according to Cassus. There you go. In addition to this, the mountains are far easier to defend than a river, while with a river, you need to protect the entire breadth of the river. With the Carpathian Mountains providing a natural land barrier for the Romans, they need only to fortify the mountain passages and keep 1 or 2 legions in reserve, 1 in Pannonia, 1 in Dacia. This would free up the Danube to possibly become a major river for trade, as well as a secondary fallback line, further protecting the Roman core, while also providing stability for further prosperity for the Roman provinces in the Balkans. There we go. I like that idea. So, folks, what do you think? Because I've seen a lot of videos of, what if Rome survived or alternate history. I've even seen some people do alternate history of, instead of just only being Byzantium being the last bastion for Rome, but if, let's say, certain elements of those Roman legions stayed in Britannia, and if Rome lived on in Britannia, like if Britain, instead of devolving, with the lack of the Roman forces there, if the Romans stayed in Britannia and made it another bastion of Rome. I mean, that's an interesting alternate history. I'm a fan of alternate history. I like that. Alternate history I don't like is, gee, what would happen if the Confederates won the Civil War? Gee, what would happen if the Nazis and Axis won World War II? Things would suck. There you go. Simple. It would suck. It would be terrible. But I like this. I like this a lot. And a lot of you requested this. I like this video. I think this was great. And if you guys want us to check out more of this content here on Americans Learn, type in the comment section below. Like a true Roman should.